Hi, Scott Novus here with another Obsidian video. One of the questions I've been asked recently is about linking. Now, I've spent a lot of time talking about PARA, projects, areas, resources, and archives. But I've also mentioned linking your thinking, but I never really show it because I think it's more important to get started with the organization system than dive into this interesting topic. So I'm going to go through how I use it. So this to me is where Obsidian just shines. It is just super powerful. You can see happens to be today's note, and I grabbed a quote that I saw that really resonated with me, and I do this like all the time. I'm grabbing things, but what do you do with them? Well, let me give you perhaps a better example. Is I have an area called Better Thinking in my note base. Here's an example of its home note. And when I'm reading a book, I will start a set of notes, like Build the Life You Want notes. So this is the beginning. This is what I call a branch note. This is when I'm going to start diving out. Like Think Again was another book that I read. And I will then create sort of this beginning note, and it's got some front matter in it. That's what this is called, front matter. And it's got, what the alias is. And let me explain a little bit about the way I get my notes. What are these giant numbers? These are called Zettelkasten numbers, and it's very simple. It is the year, the month, the day, the hour, and the minute the note was created. Why do I do that? Because many notes will use the same title. How many books have an introduction? All of them. And so if you're trying to write notes about introduction, you'd have a naming conflict. So one way to keep the hierarchy very flat, so I don't need lots of deep folders, is to give everything a unique identifier. And it's really rare to make more than one note per minute. So what this lets me do is, I call it the Z-unique system, or Zettelkasten, is I give it this unique number and then I put the title on it. But to make it more readable, I want this alias here. What is that'll let me do? So let's take a look at, after this, I tend to give the note title. Then I will give a previous card, next card navigation. I'm going to build a train of thoughts, a train of ideas, and they're connected one after the other, next to previous, in a sequence like chapters in a book. And to explain how this works is Obsidian will let you have an alias to simplify a more complicated link. So the real file name is this big giant 202310 blah blah blah. One, happiness is not the goal. Use the vertical pipe, and then I can just write one, happiness is not the goal, and voila, it displays this way inside my note. If I go to display only mode, my header information gets turned into properties, which you can collapse so you don't have to look at it. And now you get this clean view of the note. And I'm linking them along this way. So I'm going to show you what that's going to look like to create a note like this in a new note. Now, one of the reasons I set this up is when I'm writing other notes. So let's click into that one. You see it's got the exact same format as the previous one, and it's got a next and a previous card. I think of them as cards or notes. As I'm writing along, I could suddenly realize, like, Mark Goulston may have an idea that is related to this. And so very often I will put in a call out with the open bracket, space, then a bracket, or the greater than sign, bracket, note, and say Mark Goulston. Nope, put his name wrong. There it is. Has something to say on this. And then, just like you saw I did with his name, because the way I import my books, the author names become available, I might reference his book, which I think was Out, Get Out of Your Own Way. So here we go. I can put the reference to that book directly in the note, and say this was interesting. The same thing happens. I have other related notes. Let's say it wasn't really about Mark Goulston's note. Maybe it had to do something with the idea of confirmation bias. That pops up a lot in different books. So I may put in something about confirmation bias, or maybe give you a better example. We talk about satisfaction, or purpose. Very often that gets linked to Viktor Frankl. And so if I wanted to make sure that I'm like, okay, Viktor Frankl wrote about this in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Boom. I will often use aliases to complete a sentence idea so I can write something just like that. And now that book has a link back to this note, and I have a link to that book. And if I were to open the graphing software, so let's see if we can. It used to be on here. They seem to have moved it, or I'm not seeing it. So let's say graph, open a local graph. You can see that how these things are linked. And I'm right now here on this note, but you can begin to see all the other notes, like managing your emotions is another note. The day that I started this note, build the life you want, Man's Search for Meaning. And now you can see how many different other notes and books Man's Search for Meaning is linked to. So one idea leads you to another idea, could lead you to the balance of life. Like, how about that as a note? And so you begin to see what this power is that you can begin to follow in almost serendipitous fashion, one idea leading to another. And that's an example of how you link notes. So how do you do this? How do you actually do this in your own vault? Let's switch to another vault. Beginning vault. This probably looks a lot like your beginning vault. And I'm going to make these templates available for you in the notes at the bottom. So I'm looking at today. And what I'm going to do is let's start a new area. So let's maybe start a new research. So we're going to start a folder and we're going to call this happiness. Okay, because it's research on happiness. Like, that's a hot topic right now. Hacking happiness, 10% happier, so many things. And I'm going to say my home note page. And then I'm going to use this template and templater called home note. So if I call up templater, open insert template modal, I could say, give me a home note. Bang, it does a couple of things. It inserts my home note page, gives it an alias, creates all of that, puts in some code, which I'll explain in a second. And now I'm ready to go. I'm kind of like, what is all of this about? So this note, I'm going to say in the overview, this is the home page for all of my notes about happiness research. And up at the top, it says comments. I'm going to change that to happiness research is what that's about. Now, when I want to create a branch, I can go ahead and hit two squares and I could talk about building the life you want, or I'm going to say enjoyment. There's a really cool thing about enjoyment that I learned. Now, here's what you're going to notice. This just starts out as one word, simple. But I don't want to run into this situation like, how do I get that weird number on there? That's when I use make it a Z unique note. It will go ahead and add that number at the beginning, put the alias of enjoyment in here, link it back to my home note page, and basically set up all my tags, and I'm good to go to start putting my content here. from the. I don't have that book in this vault, but I would link to it here. Give it a building a life you want. And then down at the bottom, I can put in my note about enjoyment equals pleasure plus people plus memories. So when we socialize, do something fun and we socialize and make new memory, that's when we experience enjoyment. I just thought that was really cool. But let's take a look at how we can clean that up. Okay. Now on this end, you see it's now got, just updating the note, automatically updated all the links to it. If you rename a note, it fixes the links everywhere automatically. That is one of the best parts of Obsidian. I don't like that big ugly number, so I'm going to hit the vertical bar or the pipe, and I get a list of shortcuts, and I'm like, make it the enjoyment one, and boom, much more readable. So what you're seeing, the habit I have is that I'll make a note, I'll make a home for topics I'm interested in, and as I add more notes to those topics, they branch out. Now, I told you about this little code at the bottom. Part of the reason I do this is we're going to now make this data view, and it's going to give me a list of all the files in this folder with the comment. So I need to change this discoverable comment to say how to experience. I'll say call it the experience formula. Enjoyment formula. Doing great here. All right. Okay. Enjoyment formula. And now if you go back, there's that comment. So what these templates let you do is make a top level note, and then in the same folder, if you add more notes, you're going to see that they appear in the same folder. And what this little script lets me do is it gives you that with comments, so you know what's in it, you know what it's about, and you can click directly on them to jump to any note that happens to be in that folder. So this is the system I use, and this is why I say that this system becomes more valuable the more you use it. Why? Because you create more connections. So the more content you load in and the more you realize how connected it is, the easier it is for you to go, oh, that connects to this and that connects to that. And that's when that graph starts to become really interesting and really usable. So I threw a lot at you at this. If you have any questions, please leave some comments. Or reach out to me and I'll do my best to help you out. But this gives you a sample of like what I do. I'm processing a book, I'm writing what I learned about it, and as I write and I fill out my notes, I connect it to other similar ideas, and I try to do this in this sort of next one page at an idea, maybe one page per chapter, sometimes multiple pages per chapter, multiple notes per chapter. So that I can get those ideas, and then later it makes it so much easier to link to other ideas, and that helps build out my understanding of the things I'm learning.